So what we do is we create a lesson that uses audio, uses visuals, and uses discussion that's going to drive the students into their text. And let me give you an example of what that will look like. Now, don't worry about where I'm clicking right now because I'm going to take you behind the veil after I do this real quick. So I'm going to open up just a portion of this lesson so that you can experience it as if you were a student in my class. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin with this. I'm going to play some lyrics. I'm going to play a little piece of music called Let Us Speak Our Minds. And I'll project the lyrics so that you're able to see them. But I want you to listen to the piece and I want you to think about what adjectives you would use to describe the piece. And I want you to put that into the chat as you hear it. So you see the lyrics posted on my screen, and I'm going to go ahead and play this. I'm not going to play the full clip, but I'll play, probably about a minute's worth, about half of this so that you can get a sense of the piece. But I want you to use the chat for Zoom and begin to type in some words that would describe the mood of the music that you hear.
Men tell us to spit, that wives should submit to their husbands submissively, meekly. Though whatever they say, their wives should obey, unquestioning, stupidly, weakly. Our husbands would make us their own dictum take, without ever a wherefore or why for it. But I don't and I can't, and I won't and I shan't. No, I will speak my mind if I die for it.
As you get some adjectives, go ahead and pop them in the chat there.
For we know it's all fudge to say man's the best judge, or of what should be, shouldn't, and so on. That woman should bow, nor attempt to say how she considers that matter should go on. I never yet gave up myself thus a slave. However, my husband might try for it. For I can't and I won't, and I shan't and I don't. But I will speak my mind if I die for it.
All right, I'm going to stop there. We'll see some of the words that are coming in there. We've got frustration and challenging, sarcastic, a contrast between the lyrics and the tone. Stefan, that's really good. I like that because, if you're thinking about the mood of the music, the sound of the music itself, it doesn't sound like it's angry or anything like that. But when you look at the lyrics, of course, kind of different there. So when the students start this lesson, we give them this piece of music and then we have them answer some questions based off of it. And then what we do is we use that as a transition to introduce the topic. That this is an example, a primary source and an example of a movement that was really important during the mid-19th century was the women's rights movement. And we're going to be looking at all of these different reform movements over the next several days in class. What's really cool in this lesson is that they learn about things like reform and the Second Great Awakening and Transcendentalism and the abolitionist movement, the Seneca Falls Convention. So these are some of the key things that they learn about, but how we do it is when the students go into their text and they read their chapter, they'll be taking graphically organized notes. And in class, what you're going to do is you're going to have your students work on a discussion-oriented activity where we give them excerpts from what's called the Declaration of Sentiments. So, for example, one of the things that happened at the Seneca Falls Convention for Women's Rights is a document was written called a Declaration of Sentiments, and it's modeled very much after the Declaration of Independence. Well, we're going to give some excerpts to the students in small groups. And so, for example, they may work in a small group and be given a quote that looks like this: "He has never permitted her to exercise her inalienable, undeniable right to the elective franchise. He has compelled her to vote or to submit to laws in the formation of which she had no voice." Now, as a small group, what they'll have to do is first work on rewriting that excerpt so that it makes sense to a typical eighth grader. And then they'll talk about in a small group how far we've come in 2022. How far have we come in addressing the grievance that was stated there? So they'll talk about that as a group and try to put that on a spectrum from not redressed at all to totally redressed. And then they'll have to provide evidence to support what their group says. Now, we'll help them in that we'll give them some basic facts that they can look at, but that doesn't preclude them from going out and finding other information to build their claim. This is what TCI does. We write these lesson activities so that it drives the students into the content. They have a purpose for reading, and it makes it sticky for them long beyond the lesson after it's over. We'll always finish a lesson with challenging the students to process what they've learned. So for example, here we're going to have them create a report card essentially, because they've learned not just about the women's rights movement, but also education reform and the abolitionist movement and prison reform. They're going to be challenged at the end of this lesson to go in and create a report card, give it a grade. What are 2 things that the movement did well, and what are 2 suggestions for improvement? So it's a really great wrap up of the lesson. So every lesson starts with some engaging experience, what we call a preview. There'll always be a hands-on, minds-on for the activity that drives them to the text. And at the end of the lesson, there'll always be a processing. What's really cool is it doesn't matter if you're an 8th grade teacher or you teach high school government. It doesn't matter. It follows the very same cycle. What's different is obviously the content and the age appropriateness of the activities that we do with the students. Those activities can be very different. Some can be really body kinesthetic, and others can be very much built around discussions like we saw right there.